Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Chrism, and I'd like to welcome you to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experiences. And as usual, I'm going to just get right into it. So many people like to explore the Kundalini, and they come within the understandings of Kundalini based upon the valuation that it's been given through, say, a belief system, or through a technique, or through the history of some awakened Kundalini master who has written lots of books, like, say, someone like Yogananda or Vivekananda or Ramakrishna or Aurobindo, or any of the other Hindu saints that have been given throughout this world, and certainly from India. But it happens in every country and in every society. Anywhere there are people that have a backbone, well, you're going to have Kundalini. And if it has a spine, you're going to have Kundalini. And when you begin to investigate Kundalini within a society that supports it, such as Hinduism in India, you're going to have certain expectations attached to it. And as you begin to explore those expectations, typically as a child, if you're coming from the Hindu belief system, you're going to come into the Kundalini with expectations of how it should be, how it should be transmitted, what you're going to feel, what you're not going to feel, what you should do and what you shouldn't do, that don't necessarily line up with the Kundalini itself. And this is very important to realize, because Kundalini isn't always the same for everybody at all. Just a second here. Yeah, Kundalini is not the same for everybody. And, for people to think that they can just kind of have it the way that they want it, just because they were raised, within a certain format of Kundalini, is probably not the most realistic understanding that people can have about the Kundalini. Because we have different karma when we come into it. We have different karma, and we have different, shall we say, karmic debts or karmic gifts that we come into this life with. Not everybody's going to respond to the Kundalini in the same way. And yet, because we have somewhat of a herd mentality inside the many societies of this world, we have this herd mentality. And so we will have the expectation that our awakening is going to be just the same as the next person. And this is not the case. This is not the case. Each Kundalini awakening is its own unique experience, its own unique evolutionary equation that a person is having that experience with. Now, just before I go any further, I have this beautiful mini pit bull dog sitting right here at my feet. She's wonderful. Her name is Min, and she's very, very protective of her place. So if she hears somebody walking by or somebody like that, she's going to explode with barking. So I just want you to be prepared. Don't let her surprise you like she's going to scare me right out of my seat. So just so you know that in advance. So when you're inside of a belief system or a society that is supportive of Kundalini, you may want to redirect some of your expectations with regard to how things are happening, and why, and what the level of interaction with any individual can be. Now, there are some similar aspects to the Kundalini. Kriyas are fairly common for people, but not everybody gets them. Seeing or hearing discarnate spiritual consciousness or entities, this can be a fairly common experience as well, but not everybody will have it. The temperature variations, the extreme cold or the extreme heat, These are common too, but not everybody will have them. And so people will have some of these things, and they'll be very similar to what another person is having, but perhaps they won't have it at the same time. Or perhaps they'll have other Kundalini phenomena first before a person, goes into having the same kind of phenomena. Let's just use the Kriyas, for example. Kriyas don't always happen the same way for people. There are shaking Kriyas. There are full body, looking like a grand mal seizure type of Kriyas. There are yogic Kriyas where you're being put, into spontaneous yoga positions. These are what I had. There are all kinds of tremor-based Kriyas, but there are also emotional Kriyas where a person all of a sudden goes off into laughter or bliss or anger or irritation or, very, very explosive, extreme emotional Kriyas and movements as well. And so this is always something that a person wants to be aware of. It's crucial, actually, that you be aware of some of these phenomena and that they will not crystallize within your system the same way that the person sitting next to you is going to have it. You've got to understand the unique qualities of who you are, how you are, and what you are, and that the Kundalini is going to expand upon those unique qualities, that unique karma, that unique life experiences that you're having in this current lifetime. It all begins to boil down into a very unique Kundalini awakening or activating experience. And within this experience, the person, you may have some similar things like I mentioned earlier, but they will still be unique to you. It's just like people. We all have, we typically, we have 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes, that type of a thing. But we have unique fingerprints on each toe and each fingertip, you see. And so there is the variation there. But with Kundalini, it's even stronger because you may not receive the phenomena that the person next to you is going to get. You may not see the visions. You may not have the audio experiences of hearing celestial music or hearing discarnate consciousness. By discarnate, I mean without a body. So this is consciousness without a body. When people hear voices or things of that nature, or humming or music, these are all things that are beyond the body, beyond the flesh. And so I use the Latin term discarnate, without the flesh, so to speak. And this can be a very, very, very powerful experience, but it's not going to be the same as the person next door. And you need to understand that within that quantification, within that understanding, it's going to be somewhat of a lonely journey for you. Now, unless you have a flesh teacher, and I say the flesh teacher has had such an experience where they've experienced, many of the different phenomena that a typical person would have, and this person can give you reference point for it. Well, that's a different story, and he or she can begin to tie up the loose ends for your experience, beginning to give you reference material for that, and that begins to make you feel a lot more secure and a lot less lonely on the path. But this is not typical for people that are activating or awakening within the Kundalini. Typically, people have to come into this alone. Okay, it's not. It's typically not a shared experience for people. You have to learn to walk or to stand by yourself. The Holy Mother, the Holy Mother Kundalini Shakti, the Sacred Feminine, Sacred Mother, she will help you stand. She will help you stand, and she will help you learn how to take your first few steps. But once again, this is an unseen force. Typically, she may show up as a lady in red. She may show up as a giant spider or a serpent or a wolf or an insect, a giant insect of some sort. She may show up as a young woman at around the age of 14, 15. But and she may show up as an old crone, like an old grandmother type of person. And, she has these many variations that she's typically using with her interactions with people. And she may show up for you in some of those ways in order to help you along. And typically you won't be frightened. So when she shows up as a giant spider, she manipulates your fear to the point where you don't feel it so much. You might feel shock, you might feel some surprise, but you won't feel fear. You won't run away. You won't cringe. You won't jump back because you're seeing this giant spider in front of you, which is what we would typically do if we were just, operating from the ego realm. Same with the serpent or the tiger or the panther or the bear or the wolf or the giant praying mantis or the orca. Any of the top of the line predator species is what the sacred mother will typically show herself as. And this will happen in the dream state or in the waking state as a waking vision. And so the person having these types of experiences is typically alone. You don't really want to say this to your family. You don't want to say it to your friends or your workmates. And you certainly don't want to say it to a general practitioner or a medical doctor, especially if you know for a fact that they do not have any experience with regards to exalted spiritual states. They'll typically just want to give you a drug. So it's very important for people to understand that at first you may be alone with no one to talk to. And this can take a toll on a person. You'll be so sensitive to your surroundings. And many people become fairly telepathic and empathic in their relationships with the people around them. And so you'll get to a certain point, perhaps, where you're walking in a marketplace and you'll be able to hear so many different thoughts all at the same time that it begins to be an experience of static snow with all these different voices and thoughts and programs and fears and emotions all jumbled together. And it can really add up to a fairly strong headache for individuals. And it's very important that you realize what is happening. It's just you have the Kundalini and you are in a semi-state of telepathy and empathy. Telepathy meaning that you can tie into other people's empathy, meaning that you can tie into other people's feelings. And, when that happens at the same time, it can be a very, very strong wave of confusion that seems to come to you. And it can literally drive you to tears. And so for some folks that are running into that right now, I'm going to suggest strongly that you stay out of crowded areas. Don't go to the football stadium. Don't go to the busy marketplace. And if you do go to the marketplace, go on the off hour when things are just opening up or just closing down, so there are not as many people to deal with. And ground yourself. Create that energetic cord from the tip of your tailbone into the earth and let it spread out like roots of a tree. And this can be very, very helpful in you maintaining your sanity inside of this temporary change that the Kundalini is bringing upon you. And it's a temporary change. You will not constantly, well, sometimes people will have a constant level of telepathy and empathy, but often that will fade and she'll move on. The Sacred Mother will move your education into another level of phenomena or another level of exalted behaviors, or what the Sanskrit people call siddhic skills. These are the skills of the divine placed in the hands of the flesh person by virtue of Kundalini. And so she may move you on into, like, say, some, let's just use levitation. She may move you into levitation. And when a person gets moved into levitation, it can be very hard to walk. It will feel like you're trying to walk on a surface of hard bubbles where you keep sliding one way or the other until you finally become semi-airborne and you're allowed to stay there for a little while. But at first, just like, the flesh child, the baby, trying to figure out how to walk, there's a lot of falling that can happen and crawling that can happen. And it's the same with a lot of these siddhic skills, whether it's healing, whether it's levitation or telepathy or clairvoyance, clairaudience, any of the exalted skill sets. You're going to have to figure out how to work with them first. As I mentioned before, Sacred Mother Woman, she'll place them within your grasp, but she doesn't necessarily give you an instruction manual for this. And this is important to understand that you don't necessarily have an instruction manual, and because of that lack of an instruction manual, it can be difficult to try to figure it out. It can be difficult, and people can have a tough time with it. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible, or she wouldn't place it within your grasp the way that she's doing. And, she always has a reason for giving you a very specific teaching or task with regards to, to the Kundalini. So understand that as best you can. Understand it and embrace it, because nothing is going wrong. It's all going right. You may not, feel it the way you want to feel it. Okay, you may not have that. If you have an expectation of, say, what levitation should be like. Well, most people think it's just going to be like an emoticon in a yogic position, floating in the air. Well, that may be the eventual outcome, but the first part of it's going to be very different. You may find yourself kind of like going sideways. If you look at any of the transcendental meditators that have been trying to achieve levitation, you see them skipping across the floor in the easy pose, seated position, and so they're skipping across the floor. And this is also very reminiscent of the ancient, and when I say ancient, it's an ancient Tibetan practice, but it's been practiced as recently as the 1920s and 1930s. And this is the Lango Pa runners. And these Lango Pa runners are able, under a very specific set of meditation and with a very, specific level of Kundalini activation, they're able to jump about 60 yards. And the Tibetan religious orders would use these monks, these Tibetan lamas, I think they're lamas. The Tibetan religious leadership would use these Lango Pa runners as a way to traverse vast distances as sort of a message service. So the moon would have to be in a certain phase, and they'd have to be engaged in a certain level of meditation. And once they achieved that certain level of meditation, well, then the Siddhic skill would kick in. And these monks or lamas would literally fly for 60 yards for every step taken. Western people have observed this in the late 1920s. And so, this was actually verified to be real, but, it was so far outside of, so much too fantastic for Western society at the time to really take it in and believe it and to understand it in this way. And so, it's very crucial for people to really begin to get the understanding that Kundalini will bring these skill sets upon you, but you don't get that instruction manual. You have to experiment yourself. You have, just like the lamas, the Lango Pa runners, you need to go into your meditation. You need to talk with the Kundalini as if you're talking to a sacred person. She's literally an expression of divinity in your life. And so, an extreme level of respect needs to be given. But you can still communicate with her. You can say, Sacred Mother Kundalini, please, I'm at work right now. I'm at work from 8 to 5 in the afternoon. I'm not able to sustain going into spontaneous kriyas, during my work time. I will give you all the time. I will gladly do all the work you give me to do outside of my work time, but I can't do it within. And if you keep up your end of the bargain, she'll keep up hers. You'll see a direct response. Now, There are also some people who have an ability to communicate directly with Shakti and Sacred Mother Kundalini, and sometimes she responds in a level of symptom or phenomena, and sometimes she'll just give you thought packets of thoughts like, "Oh, calm down. This dog won't hurt you," or this, you're okay. You'll be safe walking in this neighborhood, or something like that. She'll download a level of information and communication to you in order to assuage whatever fear or ego may have about the different condition or position that you're in with regards to the Kundalini. So it's very important for people to understand these scenarios, that as a person develops within the Kundalini, more and more phenomena is going to come their way. And none of them come, as I said before, none of them come with a direction manual or an instruction book. But through your meditation and through your communication with the Kundalini, you can feel or discern what it is she wants you to do with these. And many of these skill sets really aren't yours to use through your ego understandings. You don't get to do that. You are as much used by the Kundalini running that sacred skill set through you, as much as you in a higher conscious state would want to, say, commit a healing on somebody, or hear a level of instruction that will be helpful to them, to yourself, or to other people. You are a conduit, a two-way conduit of information. And for the most part, Kundalini Shakti, Sacred Mother, is going to want to use you as a vector of healing and helpfulness, kindness, consideration, love for those around you, but not just the humans, for the animals as well, for the insects as well, for the fish, for the birds, for the plants, for the mitochondria, for the bacteria, for the virus, for the molds, for the fungi, all of it, for the air, the earth, the water, the land. You become a point of divine radiance. This is what it all boils down to, my friends. You become a point of divine radiance. And through that radiance that is emanating off of you and radiating onto this world and all life forms upon this world, a level of divine evolution and healing and comfort and harmony is being given into this world. This is where you're going within a Kundalini activation or awakening, in addition to the spiritual evolution that you yourself are experiencing. It's not accidental that you're having Kundalini. You're not, you weren't just, chosen out of a divine lottery system to say, oh, let's let Chrism have this, the Kundalini, let him become semi-divine. It's a very strong purpose that you have with this, and you lived many lives in order to get to this point. Many, many, many lives. And you may have some more lives to live, but with the Kundalini, you'll always have the Kundalini after it awakens in you. It's always going to be in any other life that you incarnate within. Okay? This travels with you. You hear the saying so much in the Western societies, well, you can't take it with you when you die. They're speaking typically of money or, possessions, material objects, which is absolutely certain. You don't get to take that with you when you die. But there is one thing for sure that you do take with you when you pass, and that is the divine connection of Kundalini. Divinity does not wear off. Divinity does not end with death. It continues, and it is a permanent mark upon your soul. Permanent. So any of the other lives that you live with, especially upon this world, you will have that quality of grace with you that will travel with you for the rest of your soul's incarnative existence upon this world. Now, if you have any questions about that, I'd like you to take the moment and get on your smartphone if you like, and dial in New York City area code 347-934-0026. That's United States area code 347-934-0026. I'll be happy to take your call. And if you've already called in, go ahead and put a question mark in where you see your number coming up on the screen there, and I'll be more than happy to take your call. So as we continue, when you get the Citic skill, you're not given the instruction manual, but you're given a way to get a level of instruction that can happen through communication, direct communication with the Sacred Mother, Shakti Kundalini. The skill set itself is going to use you as much as you think you're using it. Okay? And you are typically here having the Kundalini to be of service, not just to yourself, but to every form of divine creation all around you, which means all life forms. And you heard me say bacteria and virus and spores and fungi, absolutely. And even some of the life forms that have not yet been discovered by Western science. Okay. And this includes some discarnate intelligence as well. Some of those folks that have died and they're like, they're stuck between the dimensions. They're in what the Catholic people would call purgatory, waiting for their time to be admitted into heaven. But in this case, when you're around a point of divine radiance, that can tend to open a lot of doors that would not have been opened before for an individual. Lots of people that have died in a violent accident or through wartime or a plane crash or something like that, and they say they crashed out in the middle of nowhere, and they don't really know they're dead, except they kind of have maybe a sneaking suspicion, but they're not sure. They just wander, and they can't wander too far away from where the death occurred. Those folks can definitely be helped to move into their next expression. This has been seen if you travel through the United States and you go into some of the Civil War areas, ghosts of entire battalions, and a battalion, I think, is like 5 to 1,000 people in a battalion. You see entire battalions of Confederate or Union Army personnel in a kind of a ghostly white, semi-translucent state, walking across the interstates. Many people have reported this. Hundreds and hundreds of people have seen this happen. Most of them are long-distance truck drivers who have reported this happening, and they don't know. They just know it happens. They just know it happens. And at one point, somebody saw this happen and sat down amongst them, and they were able, through a level of telepathy, to communicate with these soldiers. And the soldiers are basically saying, we've been waiting for someone like you to come along for a very, very long time. We are unable to move on by ourselves. We need your assistance. And so, I would like you as a divine point of radiance to not be so frightened of consciousness, especially human consciousness without a body. You don't necessarily want to converse with it, certainly not within a Kundalini expression, but you don't want to be afraid of it either. It's nothing to be afraid of. As you grow within your Kundalini awakening experience, and as you come in contact with, say, more paranormal type of activity, certainly along with the line of sacred skill sets or these Citic skills, you become more and more accustomed to interacting with energies and consciousness that are far beyond what we would call normal. Okay, and not all of them are as nice as that soldier either. There's a whole dimension of discarnate entities that are there just to try to corrupt you, but that's a different show, and I've talked about that. And if you want to go into the archives, you can just look up Kundalini and entities or things of that nature. And you can learn as much as you can possibly learn about that. So it's very important for people to understand that when you have the Kundalini and you have these skill sets, they are not there to be used by your ego. And by that I mean, you can ask till the cows come home for the lottery ticket that's going to win you millions and millions of dollars so you can buy your extra special 1960s boat. But she's not going to give it to you. Not to say that she won't send money your way. I've had that happen myself. But she's not, it's not there for ego aggrandizement. It's not there to enrich your connection to materiality. You still have to work hard in this world, even though you're a divine point of radiance. You still have to work hard. You still have to learn what it is to have half of you divine and half of you mortal, semi-divinity. And the only way you can really learn how to do that is to be met with specific levels of challenge. Challenges to your psychology, the psychology meaning how we live in our society and how we expect to be treated as we live within our society, how we interact with our family or our loved ones, how we interact with our environment. You need to learn how to interact with these aspects of creation while you're within a field of Kundalini radiance. It's not easy to make those shifts. A lot of ego work has to be done, and I may have mentioned in other programs how rare it is for any of these, religious orders or sacred spiritual orders to do the ego work with people. I'm not saying none of them do it, but it's not common. A lot of these gurus that you see from India or from Europe or from the United States, China, they're not doing ego work at all. Matter of fact, they're doing the exact opposite. They're expanding their ego. And, they're leading people, astray in many cases. And it's, these are things that you want to watch out for. This is why I'm doing this show, so that I can give you a bit of a warning beforehand so that you can come to understand that it is a very specific set of behaviors that are very helpful for a person as you're learning how to live as a point of divine radiance upon this world, having these ascended skill sets or Siddhic skills, having the Kundalini, interacting with spiritual consciousness, that like the Civil War, the United States Civil War ghosts that I was talking about, or any kind of a spiritual creation. It's very important for you to understand that you're not here to self-aggrandize. You're not here to become wealthy at the expense of other people. You're not here to compete for planetary resources. You're here as a point of divine radiance. You're here as a level of God and Goddess upon this world. Doesn't mean you have to live in absolute poverty. Sometimes it might. I was homeless for about 12 years, but I was in a very, very, very strong refinement process as well. The bigger the ego, the longer the refinement process. Should tell you a little bit about me. So I had to go through a lot of work. I had to do a lot of work, and I was in denial a lot of the time too. And you don't have to be. You can take the fruit of my labors, of my sacrifice, of my pain, and not have to replicate it in your own equation. So as you have the Kundalini and you're interacting with this world, as you are becoming semi-divine, you need to understand that noble and behaviors of a noble quality really help a person to find balance within this level of divine authority over you. Okay. Forgiveness and tolerance and, long suffering, i.e., you're inside of a of a whole suite of changes upon your physical body that is totally natural to the Kundalini expressing itself through you, but to your ego, it's very, very, very difficult and very, very irritating and sometimes painful, and certainly psychologically and emotionally painful. Well, that long suffering pays. That pays off. That has a placement of an ascended psychology or divine psychology as soon as you start to do really intense levels of surrender work. So when I have a private student, boy, I'm pushing surrender all the time. That's one of the very first things that I begin to teach an individual, and I'll just keep pushing that until they get it. You know, and it's not easy. Surrender is one of the hardest things. And so, of course, you know, I confront them with one of the hardest scenarios right off the bat. Now, most of the people that I work with, you know, they've had a suspicion or a knowledge that they have Kundalini before they even reach me. But it doesn't make it any easier, really. It's just not as hard a slap in the face. But so just so you know that you know, once you become this divine radiance, the job is not done. Now you have to learn to live as divine radiance. Seriously, live as divine radiance. And as I mentioned before, this can be an incredibly lonely path, because no one has what you have. No one can relate to what you have. No one wants to hear what you have. And if they do, they're afraid of you, and they want to stay away from you, or worse, they want to heal you. They want to heal you of your condition. God saved those that have the Kundalini from people that want to heal them. Typically, they wind up in a psych ward pumped full of antipsychotic drugs to cover up any of the symptoms. It doesn't hurt the Kundalini, but the individual, you know, the body and the psychology and the emotional aspects can get really, you know, traumatized, chemically traumatized. You know, until we get MDs and medical health practitioners or psychological practitioners that have an idea and acceptance of Kundalini and its natural inheritance within the human being, it's going to be very difficult for those who have it and don't know what they have, and you know, get you know, within the application of medical society or psychiatric society. It can be difficult for people. And so you're not crazy if you have the Kundalini, just so you know that. You're not crazy if you're hearing voices. You don't necessarily have schizophrenia or bipolarism. So just kind of know that. And whatever you do, don't talk to any of the voices that you might hear in your head. Just ignore them. I don't care if they're screaming to what the top of their lungs would be if they even had lungs. They know you're telepathic, you're red flagged with having Kundalini. These corrupting forces can come along and really try to disturb your serenity. And so you just make sure that no matter what is said, no matter how much cussing or screaming or threats or whatever, that you don't move away from your serenity. You try to keep yourself as calm and collected as you possibly can. You know that this is a temporary state of affairs. Just like the Kriyas that I mentioned earlier in the conversation, these are temporary. They typically last anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 years or more, but they're temporary. They're not going to be there the rest of your life. And if they are there the rest of your life, then there's a very special process that you're a part of, or you're resisting it. The more you resist these phenomena, the longer they last. So just an FYI for that. And if you do want to call in, the call-in number is 347-934-0026. And put a question mark next to your name there, your number. And I have a few callers, so I'm going to come through and see if they might just be listening. So, hello, caller, 505-948. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. I can almost hear you.
Okay.
Did you have a question for me, sir?
No, I was just tuned in to listen. I couldn't log in on the chat room today because I'm away from home. So.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. I will go ahead and put you back in the blue. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
And going to the next caller here. And hello, area code 510, prefix 509. Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, right on. Hey, Chrism, this is David.
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Do you have a question today?
I was just listening, but you mentioned something that was really interesting, and how you said that
it happens occasionally.
People that go through Kriyas, that it eventually subsides, but you said if it doesn't subside, you're a part of something significant. If you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. For elongated Kriya experiences, there's a certain level of refinement that is being made upon the person. I have a friend of mine that's been electrocuted daily for the last 6 years. And these are electrical Kriyas, and I've had these Kriyas, and they literally feel like electricity. But, not only does this person have electrical Kriyas, but, they also have what we have termed the gut punching Kriyas, where it's literally, you're punched in the second chakra constantly, and it's very, very difficult because it hurts. It hurts, and they're, the the intestines of a human being are as an electrical coil for prana and chi energies, and as you're constantly punched by the consciousness of Kundalini in this coil of amazing levels of energy, boy, it can really destabilize you. And he's had this for a number of years now, and it's not because he's resisting. In this case, it's because there are certain levels of development, of refinement that must occur for him. And so part of the Kriya format has been hijacked by the Kundalini that even started it as a form of a developmental, in real-time development upon the individual. And so his Kriyas are they're necessary for him to be able to come into a level of expression of his Kundalini that is frankly phenomenal. And I have witnessed some of the fruits, the potential fruits of this transformation this person's going through, and it's amazing. It's literally amazing. And, the whole long suffering, as I mentioned earlier, really, really comes into play, along these lines. Typically, the Kriya format will follow anywhere from 6 months, even as small as 6 weeks. But it can last for years and years and years as well. And you don't want to get the idea. I know some Kundalini people out there that think that because they're having extraordinary Kriya experiences, then they must be super powerful, and that's not necessarily the case. It just means that there's a lot of work that has to be done on that person to get them to be a point of divine radiance upon the world. Some of these people, they'll spend like 24, well, not 24 hours. It's like they'll spend like 16 hours to 36 hours on the floor going through contortions of Kriyas. And they come out of it thinking that they're the king or queen of Kriyas, and therefore, their ego is really getting puffed out, and they just like, I am the best, you must listen to me. I've had Kriyas for this long, and therefore I'm, this powerful and all of this stuff. And it's just not true. It just means that individual had a lot of karma that they needed to balance, and some of that balancing was done through the Kriya phenomena. David, have you been having Kriyas?
I just have very little ones, not ones that contort my body in any way, but just jerking, when I'm.
Oh, like shaking or like jerking. I know what you're talking about.
Like my body will just like jerk to the side a little bit. But nothing.
There may be more. When did those start for you?
I mean, I'd say as soon as I became, as soon as the Kundalini was activated, and I began to go deeper into my meditation, then it would flow stronger throughout the day, but it's not to where it's noticeable to other people, and I kind of just play it off, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think it's good. No, I think it's really good, and I know that you're a long distance transportation technician, shall we say, and I know that some of the really wild kriyas would not necessarily go well with your job, right?
Probably no. I mean, I work at a school.
It could be detrimental in the extreme.
Yeah.
So she knows this. She knows this about you. And so and I forget, are you in the Shaktipat? Yeah. So that may change as well. The Shaktipat may bring a level of a new stage of kriyas or phase of activities with you for your equation as well. Mm-hmm. So it's in the kriya stage.
I'm very open.
Well, you know what, and that is really the best. And as you do the safety protocols, as you go ahead and practice these, and as you extend your meditation, as you open and surrender yourself to the Kundalini, wow, many, many beautiful things can happen to you, my friend. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that develop within you, David.
Oh, well, I thank you very, very much. It means a lot.
Yeah. So, with the kriyas, boy, they can go on and on and on. And there's a person here on the chat room here, and she says, Chrism, he or she, I don't know which. Chrism, I have had what felt like electrical shock pains in my knees for a few years before my big. I lost my place here. Before my big Kundalini breakout finally happened. Many doctors took x-rays, scans, and lots of drugs. Nothing worked. After the full kriya started, the pains vanished. And the kriyas can ameliorate the pain that way. Pain within a Kundalini context, not always, but sometimes the energy is blocked up and it's not able to move. And the kriyas form a way for that movement to spread the energy throughout the body. Typically, the blockage points will be the skeletal joints for a person. And it will, those skeletal joints can become really inflamed. Your knees can hurt, your ankles can hurt. You might not be able to move your wrists or your shoulders or your fingertips or, any of the jointed areas. Your neck can get really hard. I know, for a while for me, it was really hard to turn my neck a certain position. And when the kriyas come, they can indeed begin to relax this. I'm glad the person continues. I also went a couple of years without any sleep. I was being kept up all night. Then, again, when the breakout, and I'm going to assume that is the spinal sweep, finally happened, I was able to sleep. I thought I was going to lose my mind from sleep deprivation. Now everything is fine. 69175, that is wonderful. That is great to hear. And it looks like... that's a really good service that you're giving to people, to let them hear, just a snippet of your information. You went through the medical mill. David, did you go through the medical mill as well?
No, I did not. Medical mill meaning going to doctors?
Doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor type of thing.
I did not, because I was at your website before it all happened, and that's what kind of was the catalyst to it. So I was aware of the information, which made it easier. Yeah.
Oh, good. And wow, excellent, my friend. Now, do you have another question that I can help you with? Did I mention anything else that was interesting?
Well, you actually, it did provoke a thought that the other day I had an experience where the energy began to, like you were saying, the electrical shocks, and it was like there was, it became painful because it was as if there was a shock going from my tailbone up into my kidneys and through my kidneys, and it would kind of, almost feel like my kidneys were being passed with electricity, and I had to lay down for a little bit, and
that's absolutely true. It will feel like a jolt of electricity, like you're being shocked. And the kidneys have an energetic placement within the body that they store levels of energy, and it's no accident that the adrenals are sitting on top of the kidneys. Okay, and as these areas begin shock, I'm surprised. Did you feel yourself getting a level of perhaps paranoia or maybe some fear?
Not too much. I just kind of figured it. I was in some way there was some blockage, so I just had to lay down. Yeah, it's part of the process. I had heard about people going through that, and I just laid down, and it subsided within like 10-15 minutes. And it was. Now,
can you imagine what would have happened? How you would have thought if you didn't have the information?
Oh man, I would probably think I was going insane with everything that happens. To be honest.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Seriously, and this is what happens quite constant. Well, and 69175, that person, they go through the medical mill, the scans, the MRIs, all of that stuff, but nothing works until a Kriya comes along, and the Kriya begins to relieve the pressure and to begin to spread out the energetic, and literally. Heal the issue for them. And so, Kundalini comes with its own toolkit. It knows what it needs to do, and it knows what that person needs to have. And it knows that you, David, needed to have that shock to the kidneys from the tailbone to the second chakra, literally. And I think that your adrenals also got electrified as well. I've had this, and I have other students who have a constant level of shocks happening to them, say on injury, places where they've been injured before the Kundalini came up with such a frequency in them. And they're constantly getting little micro shocks here, micro shocks there. And healings are being given. David, for all you know, that the Kundalini could have just blasted any kind of a kidney stone that you may have been developing. What do you think of that?
That could be. I wouldn't count that out, to be honest.
What a blessing! What a blessing that would be.
Yeah,
it'd be nice.
Truly,
it'd be nice. Now, have you had any of the entity or any of that type of phenomena happen to you?
Actually, yeah. I obviously don't talk about it much to people, but yeah.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, many, quite a few times. Not on a daily basis or anything like that, but quite a few times I've been either contacted and it's not like a long conversation or anything. They just make their presence known, and that's it.
Yeah, I've had that happen too. Yeah, they're almost like flyovers. They just fly over. They say, "Oh, I see what you're doing." Oh, I've had them fly over and say, "Oh, you're a really kind person," and they just fly away. They can see.
It's almost like they have like a signature that they can imprint on your consciousness, kind of.
And you never forget it. You never forget that little micro conversation. I think it's really interesting that you're in the Shaktipat. I think that, and just for those listeners who don't know what a Shaktipat is the activation of Kundalini from a teacher to to a person who either has the Kundalini but wants a stronger expression of it, or a person that doesn't have it and wants to begin that expression of it. And David here, as well as Rosemary and Santara and a few other people, are inside of the vernal Shaktipat, the vernal equinox Shaktipat 2017. And so, David, I welcome you there, and I want to thank you for calling in and asking such excellent questions.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
Okay, putting you into the blue, and coming up to Rosemary. Hey, Rosemary, how are you?
I'm just fine, Chrism, and you? You're fine
I'm
too,
doing
right?
well. I'm doing well. Thank you for coming closer to the phone. Hey, I understand that you might have some announcements to make.
Yes, and I was just thinking of that. The biggest announcement we have is we have our next seminar here in Minnesota scheduled October 28th and 29th, and we're going to be in Mankato, which is about an hour south of the Twin Cities, and we're in conversations with people on where that will be there, and we have an expo coming there at Envision Lab. And I don't have that address in front of me. I apologize. That's going to be this Saturday. So we're doing that. We'll also be including Rochester in our plans to meet with people and to share with them as we have what Kundalini is and the amazing difference it can make in our lives. And we did. I want to thank you, Chrism. Also, we had Chrism with us at an expo there in Mankato on Saturday and Sunday. And I am delighted to say to the world what a blessing it was to be with you, Chrism, as you were doing that, observing you, interacting with people and their response, and the love in your heart for people and this work. I experience it here every Wednesday when I listen to the calls, but it really is very inspiring and touching, and I know people's lives were touched by that, and hopefully we will see them again in our journey here at this time in the cities.
When is the next seminar over there, Rosemary?
October 28th and 29th.
And how do they get a hold of you?
Thank you. That's the part I forgot. Thank you. Rosemary G at usinternet.com or 651-329-9615. And if you'd like me to, I have a list that I keep track of that people are interested, and I will get back to you when we have the new information. And hopefully we'll have that soon. And thanks to Joey as well for her help, and Katie in these expos that we're doing. It's just a wonderful experience to have community building together. It's I'm sure Manisha finds that too, and Amelia.
Well, and I had the pleasure of working with the Minnesota Kundalini community this past Monday as well. And what a blessing that is to have that level of information, that level of participation, that level of interest in these divine states, inside of a society that doesn't support it at all. And yet here we have people all over the state of Minnesota having this. I know Jeremy is from, the extreme southeast portion, and Mankato and the Twin Cities and Rochester. I mean, what a beautiful thing. And Rosemary, you are the point there. You're the point of divine radiance there. And I want to extend my gratitude to you for the work you're doing there. So continue to do the work. And what is you say next Saturday? Is it Saturday and Sunday or just Saturday?
Just Saturday this time. And then
so
the
just
next
Saturday, this next Saturday in the city of Mankato, that's spelled Mankado, and that is in as I recall, I'm checking here. Yeah, that would be in the southeast portion of Minnesota as well. And it's I've been to that city. It's a very beautiful town. It's a college town, so lot of younger people there. Very, very nice community, and they have a very strong historical sense of who they are and how they, how for some reason it's a very spiritual area. Mankato is, which is why we've selected it for the site of the next seminar. And so, if you can come and visit Rosemary and Joey and Katie at the expo, what is it again? And give them your phone number again, Rosemary.
Yeah, it's Envision Lab. It's a building there that people rent together and do similar things of shared interest. And the address is 227 East Main Street, Mankato 56001. If that helps you get there on the address.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you very much. And do you have a question at all that you'd like to ask on the program today?
No, you were talking about the Kriyas.
Well, I was talking about all of the phenomena, but David and I were talking about the Kriyas. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I have shared with you for myself, when I do my 2 breathing sessions and my meditation, that I'm aware of that energy. I have a vibration in various parts of my body, and throughout that time, and I know that I'm being carried in doing this work. I know that. I remember in the summer of 14 when I started, I wasn't having that degree of evidence, but I would wake up in the morning with a lot of energy that was unusual for me, ordinary physical energy, but awake, and my mind was turning out all the things that I needed to do that day. And this has been with me in this way, in some way, for these last 2.5 years. Amazing and grateful, and it's powerful to have that evidence. It's really evidence. And did
anything change for you after that? Did anything change for you after the ayahuasca, Rosemary?
Gradually, I think it was not. There was some purging there that wasn't so much physical, but emotional purging.
Okay.
And also, you're right, Chrism, as you are. You're right in the community aspect there, and being with others. And I can, when I was saying in gratitude for Joy and Katie, in the work that we're doing.
It takes the loneliness out of the equation. Sorry.
Well, it's strength, but it's also. I think the human way we are is that we're community. We're not alone. That's an illusion. Right.
Well, Rosemary, thank you. I want to end on that note because that is absolutely true. We are community, and we're community based. But within our society at this point, it's we don't have many opportunities for Kundalini type of correspondence or interaction, except through perhaps a radio show like this or the internet or the Minnesota Kundalini community. So I tip my hat to you and everybody in the community, Rosemary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chrism, well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking our ego always teaches us something else, and to beware of people and don't let them tell you what to do. We are one within us. That's a spiritual unity that we have. You've trained us. We give people blessings too who come to our table or our booth there in these expos, and it's very touching. You can feel that. That's the reality of our life, and you say it too with all forms of life, all the plant life and the animal life. We are one with them. And one morning, I forgot, I haven't remembered this, but it was not too long ago when I stood up, and my house has windows like on 3 sides, and I stood up, and it was a beautiful dawn coming and the light, and I looked at the trees, and I said, well, there you are, there we are, I said. We are all, I was one of the trees.
Oh.
I was standing there looking out and being one with these tall trees, and there themselves. And that's what I was. With my arms outstretched, I was another tree.
That's right. That's right. Silent, beautiful sentinels. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you very much. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Chris.
I'd like to take this moment, however, to introduce my co-host, Amelia Santara. She's the creator of this program, this radio show, and so, much gratitude to her. And so without further ado, hello, Santara. How are you?
Hello, Chrism. I'm here.
You sound really good. You have good sound. Good sound.
Good. The clocks went forward, I just realized, in the US of A.
Yeah, spring forward, fall back. So we're in the spring forward stage.
Excellent. So you started an hour before I expected. But anyway, I'm here.
I noticed that. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Now, I see that we have Michelle just joined us, and Phil, and Tejasri Kundalini. And I know Tejasri is down there in Sao Paulo, Sao Paulo, Brazil. So I'd like, have a special shout out to Tejasri. Hello, Tejasri. And I hope things are going well in that beautiful, huge community of Sao Paulo. And I'd like to talk with you about getting a Kundalini community going down there in the Sao Paulo region. I don't know if that will work, but let's go ahead and explore that. I'd like to welcome Alana Seeker and all of our usual felons there. But anyway, yeah. So as we continue our journey within the Kundalini, and as we begin, as you noticed with David, when David called in and he was talking about it, he was really, he would have phenomena, but it wouldn't shake him up. But it would have shaken him up if he didn't have the level of information that he was able to partake of. And so if you do know of anybody that's having the Kundalini, or you know of somebody who perhaps could benefit from this information, go into the archives when this show is over. Go into the archives and email them the archive version of the show. Or I believe, Santara, you've set up a button on the Kundalini Awakening exclamation group that just sends you right there. Is that how it works?
Yes, you can go there right now and join the conversation. But yes.
Oh, good. Okay, all right. Well, Santara, did you have an opportunity to collect any questions from any of the communities?
I did, Chrism. Here we go.
Let's hear them.
Okay. Well, first of all, there were a few questions that arose regarding the Tibetans. A lady on the group is doing 25 of the 5 Tibetans. And my understanding was that 21 was the optimum number, and that you weren't to increase
21 is the optimal number.
Okay, so, and she said she had heard that as well, but she was speaking about, are we not meant to challenge ourselves and push ourselves, and therefore, why is it, Chrism, that we shouldn't increase the number beyond, because that's the way we're typically taught, isn't it? Do more.
Yeah, this person is looking to overstimulate themselves, and they just don't understand that Kundalini is not something you want to play with. Kundalini is not, it is a consciousness. It's not, you do not want to storm the gates of heaven. It's not a plan. And, you don't want to look at the Kundalini awakening experience as anywhere similar to challenging yourself with swimming, or challenging yourself to be extra intelligent at math, or challenging yourself to lose all that weight, or challenging yourself to fight that addiction, or challenging yourself to get ahead in the world in some sort of an ego competitive type of stance. This is not the way you look at the Kundalini. That can be dangerous to you. That can be dangerous to your emotional, mental health. The more you challenge yourself within the Kundalini from an egotistic standpoint, the more you set yourself up for having some very, very difficult challenges coming your way. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. I will not say it's a guarantee. It is not an absolute guarantee that if you challenge yourself within your ego with the Kundalini, that terrible, terrible things are going to happen to you. But you're setting yourself up because Kundalini has a natural amplification to it. And as you challenge yourself within, say, a Kundalini activation or trying to get a Kundalini activation, which I think she is doing, you're placing your ego ahead of the Kundalini. And you're not trusting the Kundalini to take the amount of stimulation that is appropriate, like the 2 that is 1, 1 that is 2, or the 21, and you're just kind of blasting yourself into the gates of heaven, and that can have some fairly strong blowback. But I won't guarantee that you're not going to. I won't say that you won't die of a heart attack, but I don't. You'll get the karmic blowback that is appropriate to your equation at this time. The very fact that she's practicing the 5 Tibetans is a positive for this person, but her attitude is way off kilter, and it's a very, very, very dangerous attitude. But fortunately, 4 more Tibetans is not going to. I mean, she's not challenging herself too much.
But it could keep increasing, though. I mean,
well, the attitude that she has, the attitude she has, like you mentioned, that more is better. More is better. Gotta have stronger, stronger, stronger. Need that phenomena. Give me the phenomena. Give me the phenomena. Oh, 25 is not enough. I'm going to do 45.
Maybe, Chrism, could I say, is it possible that also she's not, and other people don't see the actual connection between the 5 Tibetans and the Kundalini, that it's not an exercise thing for the sake of getting fit, or what is the connection between the 5 Tibetans and the Kundalini?
Well, the 5 Tibetans is a vertical yoga. So typical Hindu yoga or horizontal yoga, it's kind of like the way a plane takes off at the airport. You're parked on the tarmac, and the pilot initiates the jets, and you first roll slow, then you pick up speed, faster, boom, you're airborne. Whereas with the 5 Tibetans, it's vertical. It's like a helicopter or a rocket ship. Both utilize the energies of the body, but one is an actual pump. Now, they both have very, very healthy. I was doing yoga today, if you can imagine, Amelia.
I'd rather not.
But I also did the 5 Tibetans before I did the yoga. I was doing some of the safety pranayama, and boy, the 5 Tibetans can really fill your spine with Kundalini. And if you haven't awakened yet, then you're filling your spine with levels of chi or prana, and overstimulating with the 5 Tibetans can be probably not the best way to go. But the relationship to the 5 Tibetans and Kundalini is basically that an energetic inducement or pull from the tailbone through the pelvic girdle into the base of the spine is being initiated, and this is why the 5 Tibetans really exist at all, is to use some of the acidic effects for the fount of youth. Matter of fact, I think the Tibetans that were using it at the time that the Westerners became introduced to it, they were using it for life extension. They were using it to maintain their health in very, very desperate environmental conditions. And so these Lama communities in the Himalayas, not having the most fertile soil, not having the most opportunity to have levels of protein or plant food, Well, these people would do the 5 Tibetans, and they would be sustained in these harsh environments. And so when the Westerners got a hold of the 5 Tibetans, well, they saw it as the fountain of youth, because they, here were these Tibetan lamas, 100 years old, going up, enormous amounts of stairs without a problem, and they didn't have gray hair, and type of thing. And when Colonel Bradford of the British Foreign Service experienced this with them, he finally found them. He went to the community, and they laughed at him because he was in his mid-60s and he was already looking like an old man. And they were kind of making fun at him and helping him, and kind of laughing. Oh, you need help with this step here, it's like joking around with him, and until he started to practice the 5 Tibetans. And once again, he began to the hair color shifted, and the skin took on a greater resiliency. I mean, if you want life extension and an age, a combative state, i.e., you're not aging as fast, then you want to do the 5 Tibetans at least once to twice a day. And you want to do all 21 of them. You don't need to do 25 or 30 or 45 or 90, but you want to do at least 21, and you want to do them, strongly and securely. You don't want to try to take shortcuts. They're very helpful within a Shaktipat, and so this is why they're part of the whole Shaktipat system. But you are actually pulling strings and threads of Kundalini into your spine, so that those strings and threads of divine energy can begin to extend the life and increase the strength and the resiliency of the physical system. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. Great.
Thank you.
Now, there's another question from a person about the Tibetans, and he said, well, there's two actually. One is asking, a person is doing the first Tibetan, they're spinning to the right in the clockwise direction, they are not spinning fast, and yet they're still occasionally, not always, feeling nauseous. And I'm assuming they're not doing it after meals or anything, So, do you know why that would be?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little while after you do that. For me, let me see. For me, about the 10th time that I did the Tibetan spinning, I would try to spin as fast as I could to get as dizzy as I could, because I knew that speed and that, the spinning itself is what was bringing, stirring the base of the spine and the Tibetans up, or the Kundalini up. And so I would try to do all 21 as fast as I could, and then immediately lie down on my back and begin the second Tibetan. Why that person is getting dizzy, I think, is because they're not doing it enough. They haven't done it enough. Or is that, do you know who the person is? Do you know that they've been doing it a long time?
Well, it's Carolyn, and it's not so much for this person that they're dizzy, they're nauseous.
Is she pregnant?
No. I don't know. Carolyn, if you're listening, let us know. I'm going to assume
nausea,
yeah.
Nausea has a lot to do with the inner ear, the fluid-filled area of the inner ear, and that is probably getting destabilized for her, and bringing on levels of nausea. I think the more she does it, the better it will get. Okay,
Chrism. And the other question you've answered actually by saying, slow down the speed. So I won't ask that one. So moving away from the Tibetans, the next question I've just formulated from a thread, and it would be, how is Shaktipat different to intentional transference of Kundalini?
Oh, okay. I know where that thread is. And I didn't get into it on that thread for some reason. I just felt that, Well,
yeah.
If you were to transmit Kundalini to an individual without giving them any follow-up care or consideration, you're in for a real karmic job on you. Now, if you're just standing at in line at the market and somebody is partaking of your radiance, well, that's not intentional transference. But if you're working to transfer your Kundalini from yourself to another person, and let's just say, on the off chance that you're successful with it, and you don't really know what you're doing, you don't know how to guide them, you do not have, shall we say, a teaching certificate from the Kundalini itself, well, then you're in for a pretty strong karmic job, because that person is now, inside of an experience that doesn't end. It does not end, and it can be very detrimental if that person does not know how to properly embrace that experience. So this is why it's not suggested that you do that. Whereas with a Shaktipat is typically, hopefully, given from a person that has had the Kundalini for a while, does have that teaching certificate, shall we say, from the Kundalini, and is able to guide people, literally for the rest of their lives on how to manifest a safe and a sane Kundalini experience, or to help people that already have the Kundalini morph their Kundalini into a safe and sane experience if that is not already occurring. Okay.
Thanks, Chrism. The next one again is from your post where you were speaking about swearing. So, to not swear. So, is telling someone they can't swear a form of suppression? And would you speak a little bit about swearing?
Oh my God. This is that guy. I was answering that last night. Is it a form of suppression? No, it's a form of self-discipline. But is a form of self-discipline itself a form of suppression? Yes. Yes, it is. So it just depends on what you want to call suppression. Is keeping yourself from going to the bathroom when you have to go a suppression, or is it a form of self-discipline, practicing the Kegel muscles, for instance, or maybe you're not near a place where you can go to the bathroom, and so that is direct suppression. With cussing, I've been lately, because I've been known to do it before, and lately I've been gently chastised by my Kundalini saying, "Stop it! You're not doing yourself or anything else or anybody else a favor by doing it. Stop it, and realize, what level of divinity is within you, and start reciprocating that divine flow outward as much as you do inward." And so that's where it's all coming from.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
So even the teacher gets chastised by the Kundalini. Yep.
Yeah. I think that was a really good teaching, because I think when we cuss, somebody mentioned on the group, it might have been the same person. Is it not an expression of anger, and is that not good for us? And really, it's a projection of the anger upon the environment that you're in, isn't it? And upon people, and that's not good. That's a very I'd agree. I just really liked that that you said that. I have to look at that myself, too, sometimes.
Oh my God, I've heard you cuss like a sailor, Santara. Oh my God,
well,
it is so amazing. And it's all with an Irish accent, it's all with the Blarney. Yeah. The Blarney tone comes out, and geez Louise, and I just don't know what to say. I'm happy that I don't understand all of it, because, the Irish know.
And why aren't you saying I do it more with a pint in my hand?
With a pint? Or a bottle of wine, taking it right out of the bottle.
You missed it. Okay.
On the toilet.
Well, okay. Moving on.
Having a movement onward.
The next question. A person asked, and people ask this: can anyone give me the most fastest working technique he or she uses to activate the Kundalini?
Oh, yes, yes. I think this is very important. And people thought I was joking, but I wasn't. And I answered this question. I'm gonna find it because I really like it. And so here it is. For quick and easy Kundalini activation, you can pray for 6 hours a day to have it activate within you, but then you want to run for 6 miles to help your body handle it. Then you want to volunteer at a homeless shelter, and then treat all women in your life as if they're your queen and princess. And this is because of the ascendancy of the sacred feminine upon this world at this time right now. Then you want to adopt a pet from a shelter and treat it better than you treat yourself. And this is a reflection of caring for the environment around you, for the other living creations around you. And then you want to do the same for a complete stranger, which is, bringing that St. Francis of Assisi idea of quality, let me be a servant rather than be served. And then doing all of this while practicing the safety protocols for Kundalini activation. It's actually a really good menu for activating. If you could actually do that, and consistently do it, wow, that will be a very, very, very productive way to activate your Kundalini. I recommend everybody do this. So those of you that are listening in the archives, those of you that are really wanting to do this, those of you that are in the Shaktipat, consider it, my friend. Consider it. I did not write that lightly. Matter of fact, my understanding is Santara is going to initiate her own practice of that today, right?
No.
Especially the 6 mile part.
And the 6 hours of praying. Although, prayer is interesting. I know prayer, let's just talk about that for a minute. Prayer can be repetitive prayer. People, have their beads, and prayer can be just prayer constantly. But prayer can also be the way we live our lives, our intention, the offering of that, and being just conscious of how we're, moving through our day. That can be a prayer. I know it's different to the prayer you're speaking of, I think. But that is a prayer too.
Well, no, I agree completely with you, but I also take a different tack with it as well. Prayer is literally having a conversation with the divine. And
yes,
you can have a repetitive conversation with the divine. You can really open yourself up through surrender and through discipline, through behavioral modification, towards the noble qualities, the noble behaviors of kindness, forgiveness, consideration, trust, tolerance, benevolence. All of these noble qualities you can practice over and over and over again throughout your day, and that is also a form of prayer. Prayer can happen in many forms, but you also want to include the intentional conversation, the thought-to-thought conversation through prayer, the worshiping through prayer of the divine within and the divine external.
Yes, I that's exactly, Chrism. Oh. I'm going to go straight to another question, actually, that may tie in with that. And so I'm skipping, if you give me just 2 seconds. It was about... Okay, so you had made a very short statement, and you said, within the Kundalini, if you have a flesh teacher, go for the full devotional surrender. You will be happy you did. And the question was, if you have no flesh teacher, then what do you do? And thank you so much, Chrism.
You go straight to the Kundalini. And if you're not in the proximity of a flesh teacher, she doesn't want you to be in the proximity of a flesh teacher. So let's just say that here you are, you're in United States, you're in any part of the world, the populated world. I'm not talking about in the middle of the Australian outback where you don't see anything, not even a fly. Then, you're going to straight to the Kundalini anyway. But if here you are, let's just say you're in New York City or Los Angeles or the Bay Area, California, highly populated, densely populated areas, and you don't have a flesh teacher, it's because she hasn't guided you to one yet. She hasn't guided you to one yet. But if you're reading my words, if you're reading the information that my Kundalini gives for me to put out there, you're in the proximity of one. So there's that.
Teacher sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I interrupted you. You were finished. So a flesh teacher, I was going to say, Chrism, a flesh teacher does not have to be in the physical environment of the student, So if a person is in the middle of New York and there isn't a flesh teacher in New York, there might be one in some other part of the world for them.
Right, exactly. Like I have students all over the world, and I'm able to interact with them, with Skype or with FaceTime or with Viber or with any of the other video communication programs out there. And these are viable in-person teachings that are given. And I also make appointments with people too, and I've got some appointments that are being set up as we. And so you can have these days. You can have the accessibility to a Kundalini teacher, and that's not just me. You can have it with anybody. I mean, anybody that goes out there and puts out a shingle, say, I'm the Kundalini teacher, go ahead and pay me $1,000. You can have that, and yet you'll still have to use your own discernment level about what person is appropriate for you. But right now you can have it from anywhere in the world, typically. I mean, I would say that from areas of Peru, you're not going to get that. Areas of Brazil, you're not going to get that. Areas of Ireland, you're not going to get that, right? I mean, you don't have internet all over Ireland, do you?
Yes, we do.
You don't have it in Kerry.
That's because I don't pay for it. It's there, though.
Well, see, there you go.
Yeah, I had it when I lived there.
You have the availability of it. You have the availability of it there. And so you have the availability of a flesh teacher. Now, for an in-person visitation of a flesh teacher, that's hard to come by because you have to move to where that teacher is. Typically, the teacher will not move to where you are. Typically, you will move to where that teacher is, and you will begin to study with that teacher if that teacher accepts you as a student, right?
Yes.
And so that's harder to come by because I don't know that anybody out there that is really teaching a very good set of protocols for this information yet. I know you have, Kundalini Research Institute. They don't really, they're not really teaching you very well at all. They don't teach you about entities. They don't teach you about these things. And, they're all PhDs and they're all kind of basing their assumptions and, trying to base it in science and psychology and psychiatry and things of that level. But nobody's really embracing a broad spectrum of what the Kundalini brings that I am aware of. Some people, are charging copious amounts of money for Kundalini information that they don't even have the Kundalini themselves. They comb the internet and try to get as much information through those search engines, and then, they try to apply it to a person that's got, say Kundalini syndrome or something like that, or is going through a fragmentation, and basically giving them erroneous information, everything from maybe have more coffee or, maybe go to a dating service, screwball stuff like that just doesn't really make any sense. Because, if you comb the internet about Kundalini information, some of that information says, oh, well, that's sexual energy, blah, 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 and so, they make the assumption that if a person goes to a dating service, oh, well, that's going to solve the problem. Well, it won't. It won't solve that problem. And they're really not being, they're not being honest about it. They're being very disingenuous about it because they were doing it. They just want to get the money, and they want that person to come back and pay again and again and again. And there are various teachers out there that are doing that right now. Somebody writes a book because they had an ayahuasca experience and they think they know all about Kundalini, and they just don't. So it's hard to find a reputable teacher out there, and then the ones that are reputable typically have really, challenging references.
Okay. Well, so let's just say a person doesn't have a Kundalini teacher, or at this moment in time doesn't. What would you say to them? How can they be devotional to their Kundalini? What would you suggest that they do within their own environment, Chrism?
If they don't have it, they don't have the availability of getting online and having a teacher interact with them that way.
Yes.
I would suggest that they begin to surrender to what the compulsions the Kundalini are giving them are going to be. So, for instance, if the Kundalini is telling you to eat meat, even though you've been a vegetarian for 20 years, and you know what I'm talking about. I say this because I know you have reference point for it, Santara.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been a vegetarian for a number of years, and all of a sudden, what happens, Santara?
You get the compulsion to eat fish. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And you're cringing, and you're going, oh no, it's a living.
No.
It's got eyes. It's got eyes and a mouth.
I don't want to eat.
And what happens when you do?
Eat.
When you finally
it's orgasmic.
It's orgasmic.
It is orgasmic. I mean, it is such an infusion. It is an infusion from the Kundalini because you are obeying the instruction from the Kundalini. It actually becomes an incredible thing to eat the fish as you're eating it. Yeah. That's a Kundalini communication. Very clear that I'm doing the right thing. And so that happens,
Well, and did it happen when you were chugging from the jug of wine? Did the Kundalini compel you to literally chug wine from a bottle?
No. Listeners, I don't do this every week. That I was like, oh my God.
That was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, something like that.
Anyway, yeah.
So the Kundalini would not compel you to do that, so you wouldn't do that.
No, you know the difference when you're paying attention. I mean, you should know. And you learn when you don't, when you turn your back.
Wasn't that a gallon jug too? I mean, wasn't it like one of those big old Swiss Colony gallon jugs that you kind of sling over your shoulder and then you use it for moonshine later on?
Well, because I don't lie anymore and I'm totally honest, no. But, the Kundalini will compel you, though, to go down on your knees to stop in devotion. I mean, and the thing is, to be able to listen to that,
Yeah, exactly.
Because
exactly.
She did that to me before.
How much did you resist having the fish? I mean, what thoughts were going through your head when you were like going, oh, forget that, I've been a vegetarian for however many years, what thoughts were going through your head?
Well, you see, I just need to go back a little bit. I was a meat eater all my life until I got the compulsion to give it up. So that was my first, it took me a while to give it up, but I would be ill and sick, and I began to realize, this was before I began to realize that I had to give it up. So when I started to get this compulsion to eat the fish, I thought first, oh no, this is not happening at all, because I knew the Kundalini had told me not to eat meat. So I couldn't believe that she was getting me to eat meat now. So it was like, you can't, come on, you can't mean it. You're contradicting yourself. I mean, I had conversations like that in my head, I can't believe you're making me eat the fish. But the compulsion that was coming from me was coming from a place that I knew was the Kundalini Chrism. I had felt it in the exact same way for other areas, for other things. So it repulsed me that I was going to be eating flesh. That's like flesh. That was I couldn't bear the thought of it.
But bird placentas were perfectly okay, right?
No, I hate those as well.
Commonly known as eggs.
Yeah. And the awful thing, listeners, is when you do have a flesh teacher and you happen to get a little bit of time in his presence, and he knows that you don't like eggs, and you have actually made a very serious contract with him that he will direct you and that you will do as directed, because the Kundalini has put you in that position, and he feels like being amused. He will say, Amelia, today you will have eggs for breakfast. And I hate eggs, guys.
Eggs and fish, right?
But she will. The compulsion when it comes. You will know it, but I knew it, but I
You'll know it. Yeah. You'll know it. You'll shy away. She'll shy away from alcohol. In many cases, she'll make you shy away from caffeine or coffee or black tea. She'll have you shy away from eating any meat at all. You won't be able to go near the meat department in the market. In the market, it'll repulse you so much you'll want to vomit.
That's right.
Yeah. So you'll be hanging out with the veggies and the fruits and the nuts and I guess some of the other combined starches like bread and stuff like that, but you won't go anywhere near the meat, not even the fish, and even the smell of it will just make you want to go somewhere and vomit, and that is on purpose as well. She doesn't want you to go near it. Those nutrients within the compact proteins within the meat at that time are not being called for, and the compulsion is definitely not to go anywhere near it.
And that can be in the context of having, eaten meat all your life and not having any urge within yourself to become a vegetarian. Wouldn't, absolutely not. And
it carries over. It carries over into the sexual expression, whether or not to have sex. The Kundalini will control your libido. It will control your urges. It will control these things. And the best bet, if you're by yourself and you don't have any access to a flesh teacher, that really is to follow those compellings, the advices that are being given through the compelling that the Kundalini initiates upon you. Another area that is commonly misunderstood is prayer and meditation. As I started the conversation before you joined in, Santara, when you're brought up into a religious understanding of how things should be according to that religion, and you're brought up, from infancy into adulthood, within that system, you have certain expectations that don't always align up with the Kundalini. And one of those is that prayer and meditation are always good and can be always done at any time for as much as you want to do them. Well, when you have the Kundalini activated within you, that is not the case. And she will stick hot knives. It feels like you're having hot knives stuck into the top of your head if you try to do any more prayer or any more meditation. It is not comfortable.
Yeah.
And this happens across the board. I've had various students go through that. Like,
that happened to me.
Did it happen to you?
Yeah. It has happened to me, and it happened to me with regard to devotion as well.
Yeah. And other people that I have, when they're doing devotion, I'm working them straight on. When you're working with a teacher, a flesh teacher, straight on, teacher that has the awakened Kundalini, it can be really, really powerful. And it can be somewhat too much at times. And Kundalini will generally put out an alert for the person, like, don't do any more devotion, don't do any more meditation. And typically the person won't be able to recognize that instruction yet because they're still new to the Kundalini. And they do it, and wham, they get hit with these terrible headaches. And once they back off, the headache goes away. And so, we learn from the Pavlovian school of Kundalini. We get rewarded or we get shocked, if we do one way or the other. So that's what I would suggest that people do when they're not able to take advantage of a flesh teacher. Well, get as much information as you can and let Kundalini tell you whether it's appropriate information or not. Make sure that you're not being answered verbally by a voice in your head. That will typically be an entity. Typically. Not always, but typically. Or an ET, because ETs got their hands into this Kundalini thing too. So use your level of discernment and let the Kundalini initiate its discernment within you. And then you can choose the various techniques and understandings that the Kundalini will guide you to. She will literally guide you. My Kundalini guided me into used bookstores because the books she wanted me to get were out of print. So I was looking for books from T. Lobsang Rampa, R-A-M-P-A. And I suggest anybody who's exploring Kundalini, go ahead and read that. You get a lot of Tibetan information there. And he's a bit of a misogynist, too. He's a bit kind of what's the other thing that they call men that are prejudicial against women? I forget what that word is. But it's just a sign of his times, I guess. I'm not making excuses for him. But read his material. His material is very good, and it is helpful. And so she was guiding me towards that material. And, I was taken to used bookstores all over Northern California. Wherever I found myself driving through a town, I would invariably get guided to the bookstore, and I'd start looking for T. Lobsang Rampa's material. And I got most of his books, even now. And it worked. She would literally drive you to the bookstore that had his books. And they're not easy to find. And they were not easy to find, but they were cheap. I could afford them. So if you don't have the availability of a teacher, which is easier these days than it was when I was new to the Kundalini, go ahead and let her guide you. And if she wants a flesh teacher to give you to, then she will guide you to the ones she feels is most appropriate for you.
Thanks, Chrism. Can you spell that guy's name, Rampa?
So his name is Tuesday, like the day of the week. Tuesday, Lobsang, Lobsang, and then Rampa, R-A-M-P as in Paul, A. But typically it's T period. The way you'll see it on the book cover is T period, Lobsang, Lobsang, Rampa, R-A-M-P-A. And he's got a pretty wild story about why this guy's an Englishman who knows so much about Tibet without ever having been there. And I'll just leave you to discover that on your own.
Ooh, intriguing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you one word. I'll give you one word. Transmigration. There you go. Okay. That's all I'm going to say.
The next question, Chrism, and I'm looking at the time here. So the next question is connected to somebody speaking about having extreme head pressure. Did you speak about this earlier? Because it would be phenomena. So they have 24/7 pulsation, spinning, rotation in the head, and they're going through this. And somebody, so she wanted to know, how this was connected to the Kundalini process, and other people were saying it was about the removing of blockages and the purification of the nadis. And so would you speak on that aspect, please? Or is it a sign of lower blockage?
I want to give my exact answer that I gave to her because this is important. You notice that she didn't that she was in pain. She said that she was having pressure. Pressure does not always equate to pain, not always at all. And so basically, people were saying that this is blockages, and they were being kind and helpful. And I want to state that right off the bat. They're being kind and helpful, and this was really nice. But what my Kundalini through me wrote was not the clearing of blockages so much. People mistakenly think that all difficulties have to do with that, and it's just not so. Much of it is the acclimation to intense energies and the infusion of continuous energies that will most often cause such phenomena. Head pressure, pulsation, spinning does not always translate into pain, though at times it can be so. Grounding is good advice, but also tolerance for the process. Tolerance can lend itself to better understanding that alone can alleviate many of the issues that people will experience as challenging. Hard work or exercise can also help, as can taking out all caffeine and processed sugar and spices. Stay well hydrated with the electrolytes in balance. Okay, so that was the answer that the Kundalini gave for me to give.
Thank you, Chrism. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, somebody has a question about meditation and how they had a hard time coming out of it, and it takes them a while to regain their composure. They get a blissful, unconditional, loving feeling that lasts for about 5 to 10 minutes after they're done meditating, and they wondered, could it be Kundalini related?
Oh, definitely. But as I wrote to this individual, there's more right going on than wrong here. And I'm getting the instruction that they need to meditate longer. I think they're coming out too early, and the Kundalini is pulling them back in or gently saying, hey, you're not quite done yet. And so they need to go for maybe a couple more hours.
But that's kind of like the communication we're talking about. Listen to that.
Exactly.
Listen to it. And yeah. Okay.
The Kundalini is not making mistakes. It's not making mistakes on you.
Yeah.
It'll allow you to make a mistake. It'll allow you to make a mistake.
Thank you, Chrism. I heard you resisting. No, you're doing well. Do we have time for another one?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, there were a few questions this week, Chrism, on the group about things like pain in the thoracic spine, sclerosis, and other things like, should a person take a cortisone injection because they're having, C7, C6 neck pain?
They have a bulging disc. Yeah, bulging disc.
Yeah. So.
And I asked that gentleman. I said, "What? He's asking everybody. He's asking me. He's asking everybody else. What to do." And I asked him, "What does your Kundalini want you to do?" And his Kundalini basically gave him the information to tell the doctor to save his cortisone.
Yes.
So, and that's what I told him. I said, trust that. That's the advice that your Kundalini is giving you. And regardless of discomfort, regardless of the pain, she can fix that bulge disc in a second. But perhaps this person is learning some sort of a karmic balancing lesson, or is learning through a period of suffering specific lessons and educations and points and reference markers that the Kundalini wants them to know.
Okay, thank you, Chrism. And things like that, when a person has, we say something like that, and they know the Kundalini doesn't want them to have the cortisone, and say the other person who has, the difficulty with the scoliosis, is it like people then go to the healing group? Would you recommend that they go to the healing group, or is it something that you don't ask for healing for? Is there a conflict there while you're...
scoliosis?
Well, they said since my awakening, I have pain in my thoracic spine through my scoliosis.
That's just the Kundalini correcting the scoliosis slowly.
Okay.
That will be a painful scenario when your spine is over curved like scoliosis does, and the Kundalini is slowly but surely, reconfiguring the spine. It's not going to be, blissful. It's like anything that the Kundalini does that involves pain. It's like the baby teeth coming in. There's a certain level of pain that the movement of the body will give that we must be able to tolerate. Like if your knees are being healed, you have to begin to tolerate some say perhaps electrical shocks in the knees, or like that other friend I described having the severe electrical shocks and thump to his second chakra. He needs to be able to tolerate that and have a high level of suffering in a way. And now the ego calls it suffering. The Kundalini calls it a transformation of the body signature.
Mm. And while let's say you come into that understanding, and so while you're tolerating the transformation, do you then also go to the healing group, or do you not, because you're tolerating the transformation? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you can, but it typically won't make any difference. If she wants you to have that pain for long suffering, then you're going to have it. Nobody else's Kundalini is going to be able to tinkle around with that. So by the way, speaking of that, I was just given a new civic skill today. On when I was walking the girls, and I was shown how to braid flesh and how to braid cellular structures towards a greater level of healing, and then how to weld the braid with the Kundalini. So I'm very happy, and I actually got to try it out today, and it's interesting to use.
Ooh, I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Just to say, walking the girls, in case you've just tuned in, the girls are his dogs.
No, I have students.
I'm sorry for spoiling that, lads, but I think it should be said.
Yeah, it's true. I got a German Shepherd and a Husky Wolf. So, yeah, we walk. Okay, every day I walk 21 miles a week, typically. Think about that, good. Santara.
21.
Are you walking 21 miles a week?
No, Chrism, I am not. Are you going to instruct me to?
I'm going to instruct you to walk 21 miles a week. That's right.
Oh, and I will. I must just share, because we've only about 2 minutes. A couple of weeks ago, or months ago maybe, you said to me here on the radio show, the next time you're in Kerry, I want you to get into the water. Do you remember that? Submerge yourself in the sea. I did, yeah. I did.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
It was really interesting because that for me, the instruction that comes from you is an instruction that I will follow, because it's been given to me to do that. And it was really fascinating, Chrism, because I was full of intention to do it. And when I arrived on the wind-blown, sandy, the sea was never so far out. And you should have heard my mind chatter about, well, really, it's okay. You don't really have to do this. The Kundalini knows you're, surrender to her. And, oh, my God. It was fascinating. It was amazing.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, my dear. And everybody, thank you for coming to the show. And those of you in the archives, thank you for listening, you future people. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking to you today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Santara. And I'll end it like I started it. went on and on.